county's plan is not a fully funded plan, period. It is not a fully funded plan, period. It has $32 million in cash of a $50 million plan, and it's relying on one of two things: either us, the Miami Parking Authority, borrowing $20 million, or some joint venture partner coming in on the development and giving us that money. I just want to be clear. I just have to, by reiterating or re-quoting the mayor of Dade County, who, and I quote, just said, Miami-Dade County is the only person bringing money to the table. That is a direct quote. There's been a narrative out there that this is a $23 million plan that is fully funded, that is the only viable plan. That narrative has been out there. And I will tell you, and I will show you in my comments how that is relevant to the veto message and is part of the standard that we have to apply. To say that Miami-Dade County is the only person bringing money to the table, I don't even know where to start. The plan, the county's plan contemplates using $9 million from the Miami Parking Authority, $9 million, I think it's $6 million from the Parking Authority and $3 million from the bid. That's City of Miami money, number one. Worse than that, it contemplates their entire plan contemplates a city contribution of $28 million for capital. Let me reiterate that for all of you to hear this. $28 million for capital from the City of Miami. The county's contribution is 22 or 23 million. I'm not exactly sure what the exact number is. They are asking the city under their plan to contribute $28 million and an annual operating subsidy. Commissioner Reyes was very, very clear that he did not want us subsidizing the theater, and the mayor was very adept at getting right up and saying, wait, everything but the MPA, of course, because the MPA is everything else. The MPA is a $450,000 annual operating subsidy to the Playhouse. That is City of Miami general fund dollars. The $28 million, which, by the way, 20 million of which is unaccounted for. 20 million of that is unaccounted for. In the county's plan, it is a not a $23 million. It is a $50 million plan if you study the MOU, which is part of the record. A $50 million plan, 23 million to build, by the way, a new 300-seat theater. And I will refer to something that Mr. Curbelo talks about. I think it was his, I want to say point number 1, when he talks about the ballot language. The resolution that the county passed, which is Resolution R-919-04, providing for and the holding of a special bond election in Miami-Dade County, references an appendix, Appendix A. And in Appendix A, when you look at project number 299, municipal project location, Miami, the project name is Improvements to the Coconut Grove Playhouse. Improvements to the Coconut Grove Playhouse. GOB funds would complement other funding to reconstruct the Coconut Grove Playhouse to restore its structural identity and add to its performance and educational capabilities. $15 million from that line item. Do you know how much the county's plan right now contributes to preserving the Coconut Grove Playhouse? How much county dollars? Zero. Zero. The entirety of the county's plan, is predicated on the Miami Parking Authority, the City of Miami, restoring the southern and eastern facades and creating a little lobby area, whatever you want to call it, which, by the way, is going to have commercialization in it. At our cost, $5 million. The City of Miami is paying every single penny, which is why I find it so interesting and bewildering that we sit here 5.5 years after the lease was given to Miami-Dade County with nothing to show for it. And I'm wondering, well, how can that be? And it's very obvious when you look at the record, when you look at the MOU. It's because the county never contemplated for them to contribute 1 penny to the restoration of the facades of the building. And so that's why nothing has been accomplished. Or the garage, by the way. That's why nothing has been done. And I just want you to understand that the relevancy of that information, the reason why it is relevant to the record, is because our code, our own code, states, which by the way, it's also consistent with state statute and is referred to in the Florida Department of State letter from their preservation officer. And I do agree with Mr. Curbelo that we should avoid ad hominem attacks. They should be avoided with reference to the county's preservation officer, which I'm sure acted in good faith. They should also be avoided with respect to Mr. Heisenbottle, which I think we all know has a stellar reputation in this community. But if you look at the state's own letter, it talks about the fact that there must be no feasible and prudent alternative to the proposed demolition or alteration. That is state statute. There must be no feasible and prudent alternative. The county is the tenant. And you know how much money the county is dedicating to the preservation of the Playhouse? Zero. Zero of its dollars. So I don't believe that that meets that standard. And by the way, our code, and I hope I'm not stealing all your thunder, Eddie. Our code, which is section 23-6.2, talks about certificates of appropriateness that are issued when demolition is contemplated, the alteration of existing structures. And it talks about the Secretary of Interior standard for rehabilitation and the guidelines, and there's obviously been testimony from probably both sides on this issue. Obviously, I was persuaded by the competent and substantial evidence in the record that the county's plan does not meet this standard. But one of the components of that standard, subsection 4, talks about unreasonable or undue economic hardship. I've already explained to you that they haven't even dedicated $1 of their bond money to the restoration of the Playhouse. So I don't think it qualifies under that standard. But in addition to that, it talks about that they must make a written statement presenting factual data that shall be in the form of a sworn affidavit containing the following information. Frankly, a letter from the preservation officer saying that they've analyzed a bunch of plans, which, by the way, maybe they have, but none of it is in the record for us to see what they have supposedly analyzed. I've asked our MPA director, I've asked our preservation officer, is there anything in the record, we've scoured the record, that talks about this supposed plan that they had that talked about it not being feasible? We couldn't find anything in the record. And frankly, it's not enough that they make that statement. They have to swear to it in an affidavit. And the reason why they have to swear to it in an affidavit is because we're talking about historic property. We're talking about our soul. We're talking about things that matter to people over the course of decades. So we don't just allow people to demolish them without good reason. We make it difficult.